Alrighty, well, everyone, welcome again. We're glad that we're able to get the four medical students, and they'll go around introducing themselves, and then please put your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll ask them. And if there's no questions left, I'll get to leave. So it's up to you. This is kind of your time to ask whatever question you have. You could ask them both anonymously or non-anonymously, and that's up to you. So we'll start with Christy.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm happy to be back with Pre-Med CC. So I want to just say hello, and I brought some friends with me. I am now a year two, so a second year medical student here at UC Davis. I'm part of the Reach track, and we're here to answer all your questions. And I'll popcorn to Geraldine.
Hi everyone, my name is Geraldine. I also go by Bobby. I'm so lucky and excited that Christy invited myself and our fellow classmates. Um, I personally have this background in being a theater arts person. I thought I was going to be a famous lighting designer in New York, but things changed. During that time, I was lucky enough to be going to community college where I could figure out my path. I ended up switching into a psych major and transferred to Cal. I figured out how to go pre-med, went back to community college, eventually finished my post-bac at Mills. And I've had a lot of really incredible gap year experiences that I can share more about later. But I'm very excited to be here, and I'll pass it to Frank.
Hey everyone. Yeah, just to echo kind of the sentiments of my colleagues, very happy to be here. I'm Frank. I'm also a second year medical student at UC Davis. I did my undergraduate at UC Davis and graduated in 2013, did a gap decade, and then did a post-bac program also with CSU East Bay. And I'll go ahead and pop it on over to James.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here. My name is James Abuaji. I'm a second year medical student at UC Davis. I did my undergrad at UCLA, graduated there at 2011, so I have 10 or 11 growth years. And then I did a post-bac at Charles Drew University, and now I'm here. So I'm excited to talk about my experience and share my story.
Okay.
Alrighty, well, welcome again. So my start off with the question. So all of you guys have done some sort of post-bac. Why did you do them, and do you recommend people to do them? Or do you have to do them to go to medical school?
I can start with that one. So it's not a requirement to do a post-bac program before medical school, although it can be beneficial for some of us who feel like we need it to either change a career or enhance kind of our academic record. In my case, because it was kind of several years from when I graduated from UC Davis. So I graduated in 2013 and then did my post-bac around 2017, 2018. And that allowed me to take more recent upper division courses since some medical schools do have expiration dates on some of their classes, or at least want you to have some recency with some of your science courses. And in my case, the reason why I did it was I wanted to really strengthen my academic record and really hone better study skills. And at that point, it also kind of built in as part of an option we can elect to do was an MCAT prep course. So that's definitely something I took advantage of. So those are some of the benefits of a post-bac. And then you kind of have some of the more formal and informal ones. And I think we've all kind of done a mix of them among us here.
I completely agree with Frank. I think the what I would punch, like just to punch forward, is you really have to understand your applicant profile in order to make that decision with all the factors that Frank laid out. So having a good mentor at this point, having a good counselor at this point would really help you figure that out. But instinctively, you should be able to understand like what does my profile look like? What were my strengths? What were my weaknesses? Is a post-bac actually going to help me? Because they can get pricey depending on how you do it.
Um, The other question I have is what did you guys all do for clinical experience or shadowing or all that good stuff before med school?
Yeah, so I'll start off with that. So I had a lot of time from med school and graduating college and post-bac. And so all the things that I did, I was very intentional of trying to keep them medicine adjacent. And also, like Geraldine said, like it all has to kind of fall into your theme or your story on your application. So 1 year I did a lot of HIV clinical trials work. That was like really the big theme within my story and within my application was that I'm a huge advocate for HIV awareness and testing. I did that all throughout like the 10, 11 years that I was trying to get into med school. Did some phlebotomy, mostly clinical trials, and less bench work and more health sciences. So interacting with recruitment and retention and thinking about the health disparities that consist within talking and researching about HIV. And that's what I did throughout the like 10, 11 years. And then and also, like I said, always medicine adjacent. So I always had some type of interaction with patients or people and able to kind of like tie that back into like my why medicine.
Another question that we have in the chat. Oh, sorry. Did you want to go ahead?
I do. I just wanted to add, because of my background, I mostly had all this experience in theater arts. I had a ton of really diverse work experience, but it was really hard to get my foot in the door with volunteering and getting actual clinical experience. So that took me a while, but what I did for actual clinical experience was working as a health advocate. So that was volunteering to be part of the social and behavioral health team there at San Francisco General Hospital. We ended up taking care of pretty much all the primary care units that were sending referrals over to us. And it was something that I loved. I've had a lot of service industry jobs. I loved being at service. And eventually I moved my way up to becoming supervisor of that program and getting a job as the quality improvement analyst for the largest pediatric clinic in the county. So that was one way that I moved up. But the reason I wanted to add my little bit in is because do not disregard things that may not be so clinical. Even though I think that a lot of the clinical experience I had was robust, I don't know that I had as many years as some of my classmates, but I could talk about how passionate I am about mentorship for younger folks. I have a ton of volunteer experience with being a teacher's assistant, a teacher's aide, working after school programs. That honestly, I don't think the job I ended up getting at the hospital, I would have been able to do without some of those experiences too.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think going off of like what you're interested in at the time really just adds to who you are. And like all schools are not looking for like if you're applying to medical school or any health professional schools, they're not looking for the exact same copy and paste person. So I think it's very important to like know what speaks to you. Like James did, Frank did, and Bobby did. Like we all kind of just did something kind of like what we're very passionate about, but it still had that flavor of like, well, what can we bring to medicine? For me, like I've shared this before, like my parents were turning 65 and we didn't know how Medicare worked. And like my parents never saw like a primary care provider. So it's like I was like, I'm gonna be a licensed insurance agent. So like I took my license exam with the state of California and I was like a Medicare insurance agent for a while as well. I did clinical research, I did post-bac, kind of did philanthropic work and like also mentorship. So I think whatever like speaks to your heart more, I think you'll like your eyes will light up when they ask you about it in the interview. And I think that's what matters the most.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with all my colleagues here. And just to kind of speak to my experiences, one of the things that I kept in mind was that I wanted to be intentional, as James said, with the type of positions that I was pursuing to be medicine adjacent or as related as possible. But I was also faced with the thing that I think many of us are, which is student loans and having to pay those back, and also having to help contribute financially to my family while also still wanting to check that bucket of getting clinical experience. So I did seek out a lot of scribe medical assistant positions, and I did hold those for several years, since again, I did a gap decade. And in my last position that I had for 5 years before med school, I was a medical assistant and scribe for an orthopedic surgery practice, but I also did research for that clinic. So it ultimately led to a lot of great experiences that I was able to speak about on the interview trails, about like the project that we did, the research project, as well as a lot of patient interaction. And as Christy said, these type of experiences really get you that real world experience of how do insurance authorizations work? What is insurance? How does this affect patient care? And those were all things that I feel I was able to speak on in my interviews that I think kind of help set me apart a little bit from some individuals who maybe didn't have those similar type of experiences. So I would say don't be afraid to pursue something, even if it's not directly clinical care, if it's adjacent. I think you're really going to get a benefit, because when you are a future physician, these are going to be things that you're going to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you. Another question that we have from chat, they're asking, oh, they said, I'm so happy to see everyone. What is the best advice to give to students who are trying to improve their study skills or test taking skills?
Can I go? Do not be afraid of practice questions no more. No more. Any anxiety you've ever had about, oh, they just released a practice test, I'm going to study everything I know before I take it to test myself. Take the practice test as your way of studying. Work on that test anxiety now, because I promise you, I never had test anxiety before school. I had other kinds of anxieties, but not for tests. And the way that was such a wake up call in med school, that like I can't just be here being like, okay, I can't use my resources. I have to, it's like a scarcity almost kind of mindset. Like I have to use them until I'm like absolutely can, whatever. If it's a resource that's available to you, use them. Use them. Don't get in your head about what must happen first. They're usually the tools, especially those practice questions, that are going to help you the most with your test taking skills, especially in med school.
I think also breaking them down in your head. I think like comparing, you've taken tests before. So technically a longer test is like mini test if you really think about it. I think taking away the power from a test or things like that, I think it's easier said than done. But I think like at least for the MCAT itself, let's say like it's an 8-hour test, it's a 4-part test, and it's like an hour each kind of section or so. And like you've taken a final before in high school and in college. So it's like you've taken an hour or even 2-hour finals and you did well. You passed and you're here now. So it's like taking away that power of like this is gonna make or break my life, and like things are so absolute. Like the mindset about that is not really, this itself isn't a strategy on like how to answer the questions, but it's like seeing the test for what it is, just to see what you know at this time point. Is it gonna make or break your career? No, because literally all of us, I can guarantee, have failed some sort of test before, even retaken the MCAT. That's in public, that's on record. And so like we know how it feels to fail, but then we also need to start reframing that, like, like this is just like just a checkpoint, just a checkpoint. That's all.
I could ask the next question. This person is specifically talking about the MCAT, and they're asking about timeline. Like, when should they take the MCAT? How long did you guys study for it? And maybe what resources did you use?
I can take this one. Me and the MCAT are very familiar. So I took the MCAT 5 times, and so I think part of the question was when you should do it. You should do it when you're ready. I think there's no rush in taking that test because it's not going anywhere. It will always be there. It might change. Who knows what like med school will look like in a couple years? But for the time being, it's a test that you have to take in order to get into med school. And so I think when you're approaching the test, you have to approach it, it's like a science. Like you're not really even learning you're learning the content, but you're really learning how to take the test. And I think, at least for me, in sitting so many times for it, each time that I took it, and each time that I went in to study for it, I gained like these new skills that I kind of used in my toolbox, I actually even use now in med school to kind of like hone the way that I approach studying, whether it's like looking at the material and that spaced repetition aspect of it, looking and seeing it over and over again, implementing practice problems like Geraldine mentioned. Like, you want to kind of use different modalities of absorbing the information, because even though you might see something one way, you see it in a different way in the form of a question, or if you're reading it in a book, or you see it in a video. These are all kind of touch points and passes of how of strengthening that information, or that thing in your head. And so you just have to kind of like really experiment and have fun with learning, which is so tough, and it's something that you don't think about when you're studying for the MCAT, because MCAT is grueling test, but you have to think about it as you are preparing yourself for one test of many. But after this test, it's like test in med school, and after test in med school, then you have step, and then you have step 1, and then you have step 2, and then it just continues. And so really learning how to learn is like the best thing you can do when studying for the MCAT, because it'll pay off like dividends when you enter into med school.
Yeah, and just to kind of echo, James's point, and even what Geraldine was referencing earlier, is not being afraid to kind of tackle those practice questions. I'm a person who took the MCAT 3 times, and I avoided my first score because when I left that testing center, I was like, I did not feel confident. And that first time I took it, I was very worried about content review and putting practice tests on the back burner. And then as I got more familiar with, some cute question banks, and then ultimately started to do I think it's the AAMC full length exams, then I started to feel a little bit more confident, and it made a huge difference in my scores, when I was just like, you know what, I'm going to try to take these exams and focus more so on tackling questions. And even the section banks that you get on AAMC, those would be highly advised for y'all to do. But nonetheless, tackling those problems, because that's ultimately what you're going to need to learn how to do and get comfortable with come exam day. So honestly, that would be the advice I also have.
Another question that we had, they said, I'm hearing a longer length of postbacks. What did you do during these years? Were you always planning on applying to med school?
Okay, so I'll start off. I think, okay, so these longer length of postbacks, I think comes with the idea of like formal postbacks and do-it-yourselves, like informal postbacks. And so those, if you summate them together, your postback career does get long, but most formal programs could be 1 to 2 years. And like these are separate as well. And like we can talk about this in a later question or whatever, than a special master's program. And like there's other videos on that. But just to clarify for everybody on webinar that like there's 2 types of postbacks that you can go into. One, informal, which is something you do yourself. 2, a formal postback, which is through a program through a university that has kind of like a set curriculum and things that are set up for you so that you're gearing up to get ready for applying to medical school. You need to sit down with somebody and maybe talk about like whether or not you need a postback, and it has to do a lot with what type of postback you need. If you're an academic changer, or academic enhancer, which is like you came out of undergrad, maybe not with the highest GPA, you might want to do an academic enhancer. If you had a different career beforehand, there's also career changer. So there's 2 types of formal postbacks out there, and that's also something you need to sit down. And if that's you, there's different programs that you can apply to that either has both or one or the other. And during the postback itself, when you do the formal postback, I myself don't suggest working, because to me, it was my last chance. Because how do you do a postback for a postback? I didn't really have anything else that was on my plate that I was allowed to do, like for myself. I gave myself, like the program didn't tell me not to work. I did that to myself because I knew I couldn't explain not doing well in a formal post-bac. And to answer the last part, where was I always planning on applying to medical school? No, not quite. I think like it was a touch and go for me. I think my personality is like the type to kind of make sure something's set for me. And I think with all of us, and because we're all close friends, we know that medicine isn't a career, it's a lifestyle. And I've said this before, like it's a commitment to helping people, like serving people on the daily. And yes, like work-life balance, etc. That's a different conversation, but it's knowing that like you're gonna be a lifelong learner. And are you comfortable with that? And so I needed to like I needed time to like make sure that was for me, and like my academics wasn't in line. So I had to line up my ducks in a row academically. I had enough clinical and extracurricular that I didn't really need to do all that, but I need to make sure that like, can I even handle the rigor of medical school? That was my only thing. That was what's stopping me, because I was like, am I ready for what everybody says is this fire hose, drinking from a fire hose or whatever? And at maybe when I was ending my undergraduate career, maybe then I honestly could say, no, I wasn't ready. But I think right before applying to medical school, I knew that that was the best I could do in regards to like showcasing who I am, and that showcasing that there's a need for me in medicine. And so that's how I knew that I was gonna, like I was applying to medical school. You just kind of do instead of thinking about it. You just do it because like at some point you're never gonna be ready, but you just know this is it. This is what you put your heart into it. So keep going.
The only
Yeah.
thing that I would add to studying MCAT, and I think James said it, that you're going to be taking tests forever. We've done a lot of sessions, I think some like over 20 hours of MCAT, like what's the MCAT, how to study. And we've done a lot of things with study skills. And I think that's like an art that you should learn it. That's either from a first year community college student to post back to even medical school. I mean, I think in medical school there's a thing called learning specialist, because at every point there's a different way of learning things. And so one of the things, if you want to do better in your biology class or your chemistry class, I think the first place you go to is your professor, say, hey, how do I tackle this material? What suggestions do you have? Also, and if you've taken a test, they could give you some feedbacks as well. That means like going to office hours or asking them. Um, and then also learning how to, like, some people are visual learners, some people are mechanical learners, and so everybody learns very differently. And so I would just say the biggest part of this is that something that you have to address at every point. It's not just like it's not a 30-second TikTok video. Throw it out there.
You'd be surprised what you can do in 30 seconds on TikTok. I'm kidding. I 100% agree with that advice. And I guess as an example of what Christy was saying, I wasn't sure that I was going to even go to college. Frankly, I wasn't. I started working when I was in high school. And first of all, I was an amazing electrician. I absolutely could have become a lighting designer if I wanted to. But I had a friend who pushed me to go to community college in LA. And he helped set me up with the scholars program, and it just had like dedicated college counseling, so I could ask more questions and figure out like, okay, how college, what do I do? And in community college, because I was on a theater arts track, I was taking I don't know if it's still like this, but there was basically like the science classes you needed to get your associates, but weren't necessarily sciencey. So it was like the fun chemistry class, the fun bio class. So I had a lot of those types of classes that covered my STEM. And I actually, one of my theater arts mentors, she was like a woman who was getting me a lot of jobs. She was the one that told me, you really should get your associates at the very least. So she helped me finish at least with community college then. But like I said, I took like the fun science classes. So when I transferred to Cal, I was a psych major. I was sort of like, college has always just been like okay, well, someone's telling me to do this. Like, let me figure this out. I can get this like loan or scholarship, whatever. Like, let me just try it. It wasn't until I went to Berkeley that I was meeting other pre-med students who came from a similar background, were underrepresented, under-resourced. And they really helped me figure out the pre-med track. So I went to post-bac program so I could take the official chemistry class and like the actual bio class. And my decision to do that informal one was because I've been in community college. I already know how to do it. I'm working jobs. Like I just thought, whatever. One of the things, I don't know if someone's going to ask this eventually, but like for me, I had to improve some grades. Um, and I was also really nervous about the letter of recommendation because I was always working. I never really developed relationships with professors. I didn't realize it was important or something that was necessary. So the formal post-bac program that I chose was a small program where I could not only get support for like figuring out how to apply to med school, but also like develop really good relationships with my teachers with guaranteed letters of rec. So that was what factored into my decision.
Another question that we had in chat, they had mentioned if you're currently in community college, it can be hard to find opportunities to do research. So is there any advice on how to find opportunities and how important would you say research is in building an application for med school?
Right. I can speak on that because I think out of all of us, I was in community college last maybe, but I'm not really sure. But okay, so the opportunities are really scarce, I think, in community college. I'm gonna say that right now. I think from my own experience, it's a little bit hard to get into like a lab bench like type of research at community college. There might be some in your at your community college, but like I kind of went to a rural community college. So a lot of them were like agricultural like research. I think a lot of them were also um not necessarily bench work type of research, more like lit analysis, literature analysis, like you were finding papers and then just analyzing them through. But with that being said, there are multiple different types of like research that you can be involved in or out of your like school. You could being a community college student there that may or may not have a pipeline to the next 4-year university. You can go like check out the nearest 4-year university near you and see if they have any research available there. Like I think nowadays they have Handshake. That's what they use as a platform to easily find these. But also research is not like a requirement. Like I want to back this up and be like, research is not a requirement for medical school. It's preferred for some medical schools and professional schools if you're not sure where you're trying to get into. It's recommended mostly at this time, like when you apply. I think what I would suggest for if you're in community college, instead of kind of like focusing on the research, is like really doing more volunteer work and like honing in on like clinical volunteer work more or less than research. And I think having those people skills and patient facing interactions, I think will help more. Once you get into like a transfer, when you transfer, then you could put research on your plate, do that. Because then you at least have like more stuff, more things that are easily accessible at a community college level on your CV.
I would
could,
just
oh,
I would just add one thing. We have I think one, two, three. This fall, I think we're gonna have four or five events about summer programs and summer research. Some of these pay up to $8,000 for about 8 weeks. And some of them are just for community college students, and we keep either advertising them on our Instagram. We bringing like directors of some of these programs as well. And the only thing you have to do is apply. And some of their deadlines are around January, February. And so we keep on bringing these programs every fall. And then every May, we get like 75 emails saying, I want to do summer programs, but all the deadlines are gone. So, and that's nothing that could be done. And so, I think we'll have the NIH next month. We just did one last month. And so there's a lot of these summer programs that are just for community college students. There's this website called ruifinder.com where there are programs just for community college students, but also not any of these programs are open to anybody. Some of them would say, we're looking for, sophomore, junior level. And so if you're if you're sophomore students, you could apply to any of them, and some of them are close, some of them are really far away. I know one student who did an summer internship in DC, but the person that she was in the lab with, the lab knew somebody that was at her community college close by. So she actually is getting, she's working doing research instead of working at Starbucks. And she's, working like 20 hours a week doing research and getting paid for it. So take advantage of those situations. Don't just throw your hand in the air and say, just because I go to community college, I can't do something. You can do it. It's just you're going to have to be proactive, and it's not like, it's not like they're going to come looking for you and saying, "Oh, please come and do research." You kind of have to do it yourself. Like nobody's going to come looking for you, and I don't even think they do that at the university either. I mean, I don't know, Frank, when you're at Davis, did they come looking for you and say, "Come and do research"? Like, or any of you could answer that question, but yeah.
Yeah, no, they definitely didn't. Research is something I was hesitant to kind of speak on this because I have a really love-hate relationship with research right now. But research is definitely something you have to be more proactive and seek out, especially, when you're at a university. I will say also too, kind of to Christy's point, like while you're at a community college, it might benefit you to participate in things that you can kind of locally, like whether that's even getting involved in a clinic. Research doesn't have to necessarily take the form of, wet bench research. It can also take the form of helping write up case reports, literature reviews, or systematic reviews, as Chrissy was mentioning earlier. And I think one of the things that I wish I would have honed a little bit better, I did have research before medical school, but it wasn't as extensive as I maybe would have liked. But now that I'm kind of in the thick of it and we're kind of considering things like residencies, some specialties do require you to be a little bit research heavy. And I wish I would have known that a little bit more prior to going to medical school, just so I could have honed like my stats skills a little bit better, like how to run these statistical analysis tests and things like that, because those are actually really coming in really handy now. And I had to take the time to kind of learn a lot of these skills in the middle of med school, which is already hectic, but nonetheless, research as a future, physician is going to always be something. Even if you want to be very peripherally involved in it or don't really care for research that much, you're going to have to learn how to stay on top of research for, the current studies and things that you're going to offer to your patients. So I think it would be good to hone the skills on whatever level you can, while possible. And then when you do kind of go to a university, as Juven said, you have to be proactive and actively seek these out, whether that's talking to professors or even building a rapport with maybe a healthcare provider like a physician, and asking them if there's any, projects that they might have that you can help write up or things like that. I think would definitely benefit you.
I'd like to throw my hat into the ring. Get creative about research. I think we were sort of hinting at that, but get creative with it. I also have to admit the first research experience I had was in a psychotherapy lab once I had transferred to Cal. So if you're a current CC student, I can't answer that part, but even getting that research while I was in Cal was super hard. But I also ended up working as a quality improvement analyst. Like quality improvement projects are research. And if you, from the way I understand, some schools, what's the word? That some schools really value research is they want to know that you understand the scientific method. Do you understand how to look at a problem and ask a question, a non-judgmental question, meaning like you're not already formulating the answer, you are trying to seek out an answer. When you back it up a little bit that way, I think that might be a helpful way to think about how to get creative, showing that you are interested in the scientific method, how to think about problems in a way that is organized.
Thank you for answering that. I have two more questions. These are a little bit more fun. They're asking, why did you go to UC Davis School of Medicine? And please tell us something that you love about attending UCD.
Oh, I can start. So I had a lot of different motivations of going to UC Davis. First, my wife was there, and so I really wanted to be near her. But also with medical school, you just want to be around folks that are part of your support network because medicine and medical school is very tough. And if you don't have a home, whereas that if that's in a person or a group or a location, it can get tough. And so that was one of the reasons. Second, I had worked at UC Davis Health for 3 years. And so I was already bought into the culture. Like I knew that it wasn't going to be any different in terms of administration and interacting with students, interacting with faculty. It was real to me. Like there's this kind of allure when you enter Davis that Davis students are just different, and they are. The way that they approach um, the reviews on really providing holistic and compassionate care to folks, the way that they look at health equity and the social determinants of health, that it's not just like a walk, or a talk, it's like a lifestyle. And so I think that those are like really the huge reasons why. And then lastly, because I don't want to take too much time, but really the diversity. I think that was really huge. It wasn't just like in diversity of ethnicities or in life experiences. It was a diversity in all different types of things. People are coming from all walks of life in my class, and like 137, 9 plus folks. Everyone has a really unique and different story, and that really speaks to the work that UC Davis does in creating a very diverse class, and also speaks to what the country and your patients will look like. It's going to look really diverse. And so we have so many great things, not just to add to the school, but to add to each other because our life experiences have informed the type of lens that we look through.
Yeah, definitely. James made really great points, and a lot of those reasons are similar to mine. And I just want to say I've been an Aggie through and through, from undergrad to medical school, and hopefully residency. We'll see about that. But my relationship with UC Davis Health in general is a very full circle and interesting one. My very first exposure to our medical center here, which is where our School of Medicine is at, was in 11th grade. My uncle was actually airlifted to this hospital. He was a victim of gun violence, and he was airlifted here. So my very first experience here was very traumatic. And then as I was applying to colleges thereafter, I got accepted to UC Davis. And then I pursued the research, or not the research, my apologies, the clinical internships that they had here for undergraduate students. So then I was volunteering, in this hospital and these different outpatient clinics here that are at the medical center. And I was there for a different purpose, which was to learn. So I was, always thinking like, this is a really cool environment. I love the culture here. Davis School of Medicine was always something that was very much a reach school for me. I thought like, if only one day I can get into medical school there, like that's my top choice. And then as I, eventually started to apply to medical school, I was admitted really late. I was admitted off the wait list, but I was late in the cycle. And when interviews came, I was like, they're never going to get back to me. Like I should just, count that as a loss, and then got in. So I feel like I, ended up landing where I wanted to be and where I needed to be. And as James said, the culture here is unmatched. A lot of schools claim, they value diversity, but Davis really does. It's reflected in the students they admit, and it's reflected in the student-run clinics that all of us here are kind of participating in different, degrees. So the 13-run student-run clinics, I think, is definitely something that allows us to have an impact in these communities and these different kind of touch on all these different, communities that are otherwise overlooked.
Frank, didn't you volunteer in the ER too, right?
Not the summer ER, but I no, it was more the orthopedic cast unit, but I was often at the ER for that.
Anyone else? Anyone? I mean, James has a good reason. His wife is there, so it's like, not everybody can get that lucky, but
Christy, were you going to answer? I totally agree with James, and I think that's so beautiful, Frank. It's such a beautiful, like, full circle story. The diversity here is really phenomenal, and like my colleagues here are my friends, and we all are part of student-run clinics. This Some of you may be far away from the application cycle, but if you are planning to take gap years or go to post-bac or whatever you need to do, as an older applicant who'd been around the block a couple times, like there were things that I felt like I can't compromise on anymore in terms of my values and my mission statement. When I was at SF General County Hospital doing that clinical experience, it was me getting clinical experience. It was for a practical reason, but that was near and dear to my heart. I am going to be a doctor, and I'm going to be a doctor at a county hospital. That is my goal. Whatever specialty, whatever may come, whatever, but I want to be working with uninsured people at a public hospital. So being able to do that so early on was extremely meaningful to me. Sort of tying with the last response, I also got involved with a research group, really that we were like a community advisory board of funding research related to maternal mortality, which significantly impacts the Black and Pacific Islander community, probably in the US, but all across the US, but definitely in California. So to be able to go into the application season knowing I do not want to compromise my values, I need to be able to go to a school where I can speak out against anti-racism, anti-Blackness, anti-indigeneity, and have a school be like, yeah, that's a problem for us too. And these are the kinds of solutions we're looking for. So that really was something that I thought was so cool. I felt so welcomed. I felt like they saw a part of me that I was not going to fall back on.
Yeah. And just to end on that note, and making it really like, I just know these people are my people. Like when we got into this class together, like we're not, I just didn't invite them for no reason. I think their stories are so great. And like that's because Davis really looks, I believe this to my heart, looks for people who have traveled a journey, because they know their patients that they're trying to serve have traveled distances, and that we need to see the lenses that they're coming from. And I think with that, all four of us, we're just like literally like most of our classmates are like this. Obviously, like I can't say 100% of our classmates, but like in general, Davis is literally looking for people who are like gonna serve the people that are what makes up California. And so that's why a lot of there is a in-state bias at Davis. So like if you're not from like California, it might be a little bit difficult for you. And like you can check out the other medical schools, but maybe you can come, like any tie is a tie, really. Just come for a year, help the Central Valley or something, because like we're from the Central Valley, or I'm from the Central Valley. So I think with that being said, like Davis felt like home, like has always been home. And like I'm proud to go here, and I'm proud to be like an Aggie for life. So, or hopefully with Frank.
Thank you all for your responses. Another question that we have in the chat. Somebody said, can you share your medical interview experience? What do you think helped you stand out? What went well, and what would you improve on?
I can probably jump in here. So in terms of the interview trail, since it kind of was a long journey, I always knew that I would have to familiarize myself with the MMI kind of structure, since most medical schools have implemented an MMI, at least question or format for the most part in their interviews. So I basically searched on YouTube, because I'm a big YouTube kind of person. So went to look at a lot of the MMI scenarios that were presented by some of these different companies, and kind of saw the way that they tackled some of these questions. And that's something that kind of helped, I think, me when it came to how to tackle a lot of the questions, because for a lot of these questions, there really doesn't seem to be like a direct right or wrong answer. It's just more so they want to see how you can think through the question. So that's one thing I did to help prepare for interviews. And what I found on the interview kind of trail was that the things I was able to speak on, or at least draw connections to or refer to a lot, were my experiences working in a clinical setting. So I referenced earlier that I worked in an orthopedic clinic for about 5 years, and a lot of my stories and narratives that I referenced or examples came from that job. So I always encourage people, like, don't be afraid to take a gap year or so if you need to, because honestly, it helps with that maturity that you can speak to on the interview trail. And similarly, how I was mentioning earlier, being familiar with like the insurance process and things like that. When I'm getting interviewed by physicians, a lot of them will be like, actually, yeah, I hate peer-to-peers, or yeah, I hate the authorization process. And I was able to have some semblance of familiarity with that. So I think that's definitely something that helped improve. But I would say, meeting with a friend or a colleague, or even signing up for some of these MMI workshops to really get that practice in and becoming comfortable speaking to people across the camera on scenarios, is something that would definitely benefit you for future interviews.
I think for the interview trail, I waited so long to get an interview, and so the practice that I did was immense. So my mentor was like a really huge resource because they offered so many practice MMIs throughout the interview season. So I think like just like practice questions, just like any other thing that you want to get good at, it's like you're not practicing to become perfect, you're practicing to improve. And so like every time that I went into a practice MMI, I took it as if like that was going to be my interview. And so that was like one thing that really helped me. And the second thing, which is really cliche, but it's like to be yourself. I think that like people want to make sure that you match the person that they see on the application. And the only way they do that is by asking you for an interview. And so the hope is that like what you wrote about, what you talked about, the stories that you gave, the anecdotes and the experiences matches the person that they see when they open up their Zoom. And I think that at least for me, that happened. Like I talked about things that didn't even have to do with medicine because it was just part of me. I think like one question was just like, oh, describe a time where you oh, something that you had, something new that you learned. I learned how to swim as an adult, and I basically relayed that story to like essentially you just have to have a tie, but just basically connecting it to, oh, learning how to swim as an adult. I had to put like trust in this instructor and dive into the deep end, and I related it back to like the trust that patients have to put into a physician. And so you just have to find ways to make your stories connect with the question. And there's no one really grading you um on on what you say, because everything that you say, it speaks to you and it should speak to you. That's, I think, that the biggest thing is like you want to make sure that you're not lying because people can really like see through that. You want to speak to your experiences, and so the answers that you provide should be things that actually happen to you.
Just in case we run out of time, the number one thing that I wanted to say today, which I think ties in with this question, is I think the biggest thing I am grateful for that I practiced was curiosity throughout the application process. And by that, I mean the personal statement took a lot out of me. And also I reapplied twice. So I did the situation twice. And so it took a lot of curiosity. I think it can be really hard to, when you go through the interview process, it's like another beast of the thing that I didn't realize was going to be like way harder. Because I agree with James, you should practice, you should have stories lined up, you should know what the questions are, the most likely questions you're going to be asked, and you should somewhat have a response lined up and practiced. So I think that during that season, it can be really tough when you're just waiting for a really long time and your mind starts to go to places of like, is it me? Am I the problem? Should I even do this? Like I was questioning myself so much during that first round. And I think the second one, I remained really curious. I got really involved in journaling, which was huge and ended up being like the source of a lot of my responses during that interview time, because I could just go back and look at my experiences and the way I thought about those experiences and think about also how I've grown from that point, which most schools want to see. They want to see how you are a leader usually and how you learn and adapt in your sense of resiliency. But I think curiosity is really, really important. I also say curiosity from the framework of they're interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them. And I think having that in my heart like gave me a lot of agency in the situation. That's what helped me allow myself to be myself, because it was like, I'm freaking awesome. I've had, especially when you work on your CV and you start to go, whoa, I did so much stuff. But you go, I'm freaking awesome. Why should I grant y'all the privilege of my brain and my space and my power and my advocacy here? So that really helped me like to sit in and be in this interview and be with this person and be in the moment and go, why should I pick you? So I think that curiosity of like knowing who you are, not being too hard on yourself, allowing yourself to ask questions about what could I have done better next time without judgment, without critiquing yourself too hard. And then also having a curiosity of like, why do I want to pick this school? Why do they matter to me?
Okay, and to
You're the only person that's ever done their CV to feel that they're awesome because gosh, I feel like
And
no,
I'll share it too, because it's beautiful. It's pink too.
so
And
we'll
it-
have
no,
Dr. Oh, sorry, guys. So
No.
next month we have Dr. Campa who's going to come and talk about from Davis. He's going to come and talk a lot about the interview. I would just say the interview, there's three things that I would tell you is first, it's something you have to do and experience. That means like applying for Starbucks, like going to those interviews. It's a good practice. Second, I think like I've learned more about interviewing when I interview other people. And this is something that our leadership team at Prima CC doesn't like this, but when we're recruiting people, we make them sit through interviewing their team members, which I think until you do that, you learn so much when you interview somebody else, the things that you had no idea that, oh my gosh, like I'd really noticed this. And so I think, it's kind of like the whole thing in medicine is you see one, you do one, you teach one. And I think is that you have to be able to experience those both ends of it. I've learned more from interviewing other people than me being interviewed, but also like, being able to understand the world and going through that experience. I think a lot of you, if you're just applying, if you're going through this whole process and your first high stress interview is for medical school, then you're going to be really stressful. But if you've had jobs or if you've done summer programs or if you've done other things, that's where the practice is. And that's the whole, I think Christy put that in there about 10,000 hours. Like, obviously, don't do 10,000 hours of interviewing, but you need to like practice things in life to be able to do it, getting your first interview at Starbucks or wherever you do, that's like good practice. And then the last thing is that I would just say about interviewing is that whatever you think is your weakness, make sure you address that and you know about it because that's the one thing they're going to pick on. So if you don't have good grades, if you, I don't know, whatever it is, like if it's medical school work or whatever else, and this isn't a question to ask you about, oh, what's your weakness, and if you actually like literally in that interview, you're saying, oh my God, they could read that from your body language, the deer in the headline. And so I think there's a quote by Socrates that says, an unexamined life is not worth living. Now, but I think is you need to examine your life and see what your weaknesses are. And what Bobby said that, she thinks her CV is awesome, which I think that's great. That's like, but whenever I do my CV, like I get really, anxiety. And so I always look through it and figure out like, okay, I did this, I did X, Y, Z, and be able to justify it. So I don't know. But she's the first person that's actually ever done her CV. And because man, when I do my CV, I felt like I started drinking.
The only one who's talked about it, I'm sure, my folks here have.
Yeah, sorry. Real quick, I want to just add one more thing because everybody had really good like substance, like a very what you should put in your answers, but also like heads up, like nonverbal cues and nonverbal language is as important than what you're saying. And like, because if you're already in the interview like cycle now for really anything, a lot of it's like virtual. So it's about practicing not moving around, and it's about practicing staring at that camera and also emoting because so much practice can make you sound so robotic, and like having done like practice interviews with people before, it's apparent that you've rehearsed it, but the point is to be as so good that it's the first time you've heard this question and to deliver it as such. So like making eye contact, maybe using hand gestures, back straight, and not so much things in the background, maybe have like a fake background, and making sure like you're making the eye contact and just saying what you have to say and enunciate, emote. And that's pretty much it. And that's a great answer. Everybody else's advice, add mine to it. Solid, you're in.
Thank you for that. Another question that we have, they said, how do you find your clinical experience opportunities? Is there any specific source or website that contributed significantly?
I will say my clinical experiences initially came from Craigslist. I looked at the jobs section, and honestly, you'll find like when you're trying to gain clinical experience, particularly as an undergrad, as a community college student, it's sometimes hard because a lot of these, clinics want, certifications and X years of experience, which let's face it, none of us had at that point. So, if you do find like private practices, because a lot of them will post on Indeed, Craigslist, those are good options for you to kind of seek out some of these opportunities. And I find that the smaller practices, the ones that don't use maybe like outsourced companies or third party kind of organizations to hire, tend to have a more enriching experience, in my experience, only because it allows for more growth within that company, and it allows you to kind of stand out more. So for example, like if I can speak to being a scribe because I was one, there were, formal scribe companies where you went through training and were then assigned designated spots and you would rotate to all these different locations. But my first position was found on Craigslist, and it was just a surgeon who needed some help with his notes. And I was able to build a rapport, learn his style, and do a lot of on-the-job training for that and medical assisting. And it kind of grew into more opportunities to help with research. And that's how I got a publication and things like that. So I think being able to kind of seek out some opportunities, and mind you, sometimes they're not the most lucrative, I will be honest, but something that I was looking for was more so experience, and can I get a letter of rec from this physician, and what else can I do in this company? And those were things that served me well, at least for my clinical experiences.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Another question that we have, it is, what is the biggest challenge going from undergrad to medical school?
How long do you guys have? I'm just kidding. I can jump in here too. I would say the biggest learning curve was learning how to learn differently, right? So in undergrad, like, I feel like I had a system that, even when I did my post-bac, like, this is how I'm able to study, this is what's going to get me the grades. But once you get to medical school, the blocks that you have differ so very, like, they vary so widely too, that maybe one study strategy that you had for one block is not going to work for the next one. And really honing the type of skills that you like to kind of rely on is something that's definitely beneficial, because in medical school, when they say it's drinking out of a fire hydrant, it really is, honestly. And one of the things that I still struggle with is being comfortable not fully knowing all of the material. Like, you're going to know enough of it to do well, but you could still study for 24 hours a day and still not know everything there is to know about everything. So being comfortable with kind of, knowing enough of what you need to know is definitely something hard. And then just the pace, honestly, and having to, some of you may know now that step one is no longer graded and it's pass fail, it does kind of shift the focus on having to overload your plate with a lot of extracurriculars, a lot of research, if that's just, if your specialty lends itself to that. But I think that's the biggest shock. Like, I literally sometimes don't even have time to go grocery shopping or do laundry because of how busy my schedule is. And I think all of us can attest to just time management. You have to really get that down in medical school.
Yeah, this room is blurred for a reason, okay? I'll tell you that right now. These little backgrounds are quite practical. Yeah, sort of in line with Frank said, if you haven't failed yet, get prepared to. You're going to fail an academic thing in one way or another, and it's not going to be the end of the world. So this and it's really hard. I the undergrad thing is a little hard for me because it was like theater arts, CC, whatever, all this kind of stuff. But the biggest thing I would say is like right before med school or right at those last couple classes you got to take right before your application, you are trying so hard to do your absolute best, and you get hundreds and you get A's and you get this like, or hopefully you do, and then you get these wonderful like positive affirmations from them. You're going to need to find other ways to get that positive affirmation, and to get the wind back under your sails, because it's not going to appear as an A or 100% anymore.
True. And then to add to that, it's like one thing I was super uncomfortable in undergrad is like asking for help. And like I think from community college to undergrad, it's like so hard because like one culture, like whatever culture you're from, it may just warrant like suffer in silence. And like you have to like put yourself in an uncomfortable space enough times that asking for help doesn't become uncomfortable. And so I think me in undergrad would be like, I'll just struggle. And then like in medical school, there is like, I catch myself doing the exact same thing. Like I always catch myself like, oh no, like everybody's like busy. I can't ask for help. Or like sometimes I'll catch myself like, no, I think I should know this by now. And maybe like I'll get it at some point. But then like at that point, I think you need to be sensitive enough to yourself. And I say this all the time in every panel is like, be sensitive to when you need to help, because it's like, you can't go through this thing alone, like through life alone in general. But medical school, you cannot go through it alone. And whether or not it's just leaning on someone like your friends, like your family in med school that you chose, or like your faculty, or like a staff member that you trust, it's really about like pushing yourself to be like, okay, I'm struggling, I feel it, I need help, and then being vulnerable enough to even ask. And I think that's like the biggest change. And like I'm still working on it to this day, and like I think we're all working on it each day to be vulnerable, and like it's getting easier with like the right people. So it's like overall like start now. All of this advice, start now.
If you noticed, none of us really gave an exact study method because it becomes so personal. So these things, even though it feels like, wait, they didn't actually tell us how to study, answering these questions is going to help you figure out what you need to do in order to study better, asking for help, or asking yourself, is the study method even working for me? Like, this is the kind of stuff you want to be answering.
Maybe we just don't study. Who knows? Just kidding. No, we study. We study. We can't get this far without studying. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. You have to.
Thank you. Another question that we have from the chat. Somebody said they're planning on transferring to a 4-year anniversary, university next year, but not currently pre-med and haven't taken any prerequisites. They're saying if I have a good chance of getting into med school if I started now, or is it better to do a post-bac?
Ooh, I can answer that. I mean, not from my experience, but watching someone very close to me do the same thing. My wife was an art international developmental studies major and had no prerequisites going in at leaving college, and pre-med wasn't even anywhere near her radar. But then afterwards transferred or basically did community college classes and then took those classes. So you have to take the prereqs. Like you can't like apply into med school without taking the prerequisites. So one way or another, you have to take those classes because it shows that you can they're just requirements. They don't show anything. They're just requirements you have to take. And med school's not going anywhere. And so really it's like whenever you complete those is when you'll be a good applicant or a good candidate to apply to med school, but you have to complete those. And so I would say like if you I think your questions were like either doing the classes or doing a post-bac, like you don't have to do a post-bac. It's really like what you feel would best help your learning style. Like if you feel like you go to community college and can take those classes and excel, then do that. If you feel like you need more structure, like Christy was talking about the different types of postbacks, if you feel like you need that structure and entering a formal postbac, then do that. The latter or the former, and talking about like the community college, that's like more so of like like at your own pace postbac. It's not official, but it's basically still a postbac because you're doing it after you receive your bachelor. And so yeah, it's really up to you and what you feel works best for you. But at the end of the day, like med school isn't going anywhere, and it will be there when you're ready.
Sorry, to add to that, whether to take it in undergrad, like when you transferred for the 2 years or maybe 3 years at a 4 year, and then maybe do a post back. I think for me, you have to consider finances too. Like a lot of this is are you qualifying for the Pell Grant? So it's like what you have to consider like the money outside of your qualification from the Pell Grant. Because at some point the postbac's going to cost money. Actually, always and anyways, once you earn that bachelor's degree, it will be covered. It's out of pocket. Like there's ways for you to kind of go around that and like scholarships, etc. But like once you earn your bachelor's degree, like basically like your financial aid from FAFSA or whatever you're getting from whatever state you're from, but in California Pell Grant, the Cal Grant A and B, like that ends kind of like after your 4 years or like once you get that degree. So consider that. For me, if finances is an issue, I would just start taking the prereqs then. I would start taking the prereqs in the 4 year university. If you haven't, obviously like slow it down so that you can do well, because like if you're going to a quarter system, you have to pace yourself in that way. If you're going to a semester and you're taking other science courses, pace yourself. Because I know there is a reputation that a 4 year university is it's a little bit more rigorous, I guess, than a community college class for this exact same class, maybe a Gen Chem class. But with that being said, just reconsider your finances, because after a certain time, like you won't have that financial aid. So like for me personally, I would take it in the 4 year, and then whatever I don't get after that, then I'll just finish it with an informal, and obviously do well. So you don't need to do a formal post-bac like after, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Another question next that we have is, when in community college, what are some things that I need to be focusing on before transferring to med school or before med school?
Yeah, I think we mentioned a couple before, and it's just like kind of making sure first things first, is medicine right for you? Like it's a health profession right for you. And to trial that out, it's really like shadowing, immersing yourself in like these spaces, maybe talking to health professionals there, attending health empowerment conferences. Like UC Davis has a giant one, a pre-health conference that they invite everybody, like even high school students from. There's a lot of like avenues in California, like Avenue B, Avenue M, at least at Davis. And then there's those summer institute research things that they have that's planned. And so it's like really immersing yourself in the field and making sure that's what you want to do. Because like in community college, it's really about, exploration. I think that's what community college is to me, like getting your feet wet with like academics, the rigor of college, like what it takes to like, do extracurriculars, academics, and balance all that out. That is, I think, what community college is to me. Do not overload yourself, because then that's when you'll end up doing a post-bac. So like to me, community college, explore, find your balance, find your people, find what works for you. And then if you're done with that, like this is not the advice you're trying to hear. The advice is then like volunteer. Like to me, volunteer, get into research, really like get your feet wet, because now when you get into a 4 year university, there's opportunities there that requires a CV or a resume that is built. And then people who are already in that 4 year university that didn't transfer from community college are going to have things on their CV that you may or may not have. So like everything's always a competition, which is like sad, because like I think there's room for all of us, because there's a place for all of us in medicine. But I think with that being said, you need to like be aware that like, hey, like what can I do to like get some of these quality experiences. Quality is key, not about the numbers, quality. And then have them on your CV. Then when you transfer, apply to, one or two or three things that will speak highly of you. And then really decide, like, do you want to apply to a health profession school like in your 4th year, next year? Like the timeline's all like not linear. Like it could be if you're that type of person, but with all of us, no. Like not if yours was linear. Almost caught one of y'all's head so still. But yeah.
I think since, oh, go ahead, Jim.
No.
Oh, I think since
Beauty before age.
Christy mentioned it, I just wanted to say, in terms of like that path of figuring out if healthcare profession is for you, if being a doctor is for you, I just want to make sure I put that statement out there. Don't confuse it with, do I fit in here? Really think about, like, do I like it here? Am I needed here? A lot of our classmates some of us have really wonderful, beautiful experiences with healthcare that led us to want to be here. And a lot of us have really horrible experiences personally from ourselves or what our family or friends have been through that made us go, I'm needed here. When I was at the county hospital, seeing some of the patients, knowing how much I love being there for the patients, advocating for them, knowing how some, there were some physicians where I was like, if I was here, I would not fit in, but I want to still be here regardless for the patients. All of us on the panel are underrepresented pre-physicians in healthcare. So I just want to put that out there. Like, don't discount yourself a little bit too early, because sometimes these institutions have a way of making you feel that way. Hope that's landing somewhere.
Yeah, so tomorrow morning we have Hugo Morales, who's been like a pre-health advisor for 40 years. He's going to talk about putting together your timeline and how to self-assess. And so show up tomorrow. But I think what Bobby said at the end, like, these institutions are not built for people that are first gen. I mean, or legacies, because believe it or not, I run into more people in healthcare that their daddy and their mommies were brothers, and I mean uncles and grandpas that were doctors, and so it's a very and so even in general, higher education is built for the legacy. That's why, like, we just passed a bill in California that makes legacy admissions illegal, but still, I'm always surprised, like, some of the doctors I work with, like, oh yeah, so what? My dad was a doctor, and he took me to rounds when I was like 11. It's like, 11, I was still like throwing poop at the wall, but hey, Um, but yeah, and so a lot of these folks and a lot of these institutions are built, to kind of what do they say, reverberate the system. And so but yeah, but I think, and then I would just add is that healthcare, like healthcare is such a wild field. Like, being a physician is very different than being um even different commitments in terms of like what you're willing to do than, for example, a nurse. But you still have to like people, you still have to enjoy being around people that are on their worst day of their lives, or hear the worst news of their lives. And if that's something that is challenging for you, and you're not going to get that unless you're like someone like Frank, who's had this, had experienced that in their family. Um, being in there, that's why like volunteering is so important, and being in that setting. But if you're okay with that, then yeah. And I would say, becoming a physician has to do with, like, if you're willing to put in the time, the effort, and all of those things. And if that's not something that you're willing to do, there's a lot of the things you could do that are, I mean, an EMT is as important as the ER doctor. A nurse is as important, so there's like this whole team aspect of it. But that medicine requires you, and I think what Christy said, that it's a calling. It's not just a job that you get. you're not going to be able to just clock out and go home and be away. You have to read, you have to keep up with even when you're done. I mean, in medical school and residency, you're always studying, but even as a physician, you're done. You still have to keep up with treatments and new things that are coming out, go continuing education. So you have to do all of that. And I think you have to do that for most things if you want to go into healthcare. But if you're the kind of person that I'm looking for a job that I could clock out at 5 o'clock and not worry about it till Monday, I would say go become an accountant or do something else, because you're going to constantly have to update yourself and also worry about other people, like your people's lives in your hand. And if you're okay, uh, if you're if that's too, and if you're nonchalant about it, then that's also very dangerous too. So, anyways, I'm rambling at this point, so I'm gonna go away.
This next question is related to the MCAT. Someone wanted to know, how do you know when you are ready to take the MCAT? Do you have any like personal experiences with it other than taking practice exams?
Okay, all of us, low key and high key, I think we all took the MCAT more than once, correct? Did you, Bobby? You took it once. Okay,
I took
queen.
it once, but it took me 2 years. I took it when I knew I was ready. And so my very short and quick answer, the counselor that I got from my formal post-bac program said, look at what the average MCAT score was last year for admitted students. Once you hit that number, or you feel comfortable that you can hit that number with your practice exams, take it. So it took me 2 years to hit that average that I wanted. And I knew that I could hit it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that all applies to us, right? At some point we were like reaching for a goal, like a number, and then once we kind of hit that, that was like we were like, oh, okay, we're gonna shoot for that and then hope for the best. Like, but also like for us three, we took the MCAT like more than once, so it's like I guess you felt kind of ready, maybe not in the first one, maybe you didn't feel ready on the second one. It's all really like a like a personal journey on like the MCAT part, but it's about the scoring. At the end of it, it's data driven. Like if when you're ready, it's about the data. There's not a miracle savior somewhere that's gonna come down and you scored 497 on your last practice full length in testing standards and that you're tested like next week. There's no way this testing guy is gonna give you 511. I'm gonna be honest with that. I mean, it could. Sorry, it could. It could. There's a chance, but is it a high chance? I'm gonna say I'm gonna bet my medical degree on it that it's not gonna be a high chance. Ooh,
Yeah,
The
Sorry, go ahead.
past predicts the future.
James is looking at me as if he was an anomaly to this. Is that true,
No,
James?
no, it's just the whole betting your medical degree. It's just like I don't know, I took too long to get
Well,
I can't just bet it. But I mean I think I share your sentiments. Like I think like you're right, it's data driven. Like you test around what you're gonna test around when you test. It's like not gonna be this super like I think it's like maybe plus or minus 2 or 3, I think maybe is the data. You're not gonna jump like 8 points, unless like yeah, it's just very unlikely. And so it's really like Christy said, it's like and it's even hard to really pinpoint what it is, but it's just a feeling and it's hard to even describe the feeling, but you just know based off of like how you've been doing, like, and it's so multifaceted. It's not just like how you're scoring, it's like how's your mental, because this test, besides it being like difficult in the sense of like the timing, the content, all that stuff, it's really a mental test of like the stamina you have to do, like the really like preparing yourself, so taking practice after practice after practice, or waking up and going over your wrong answers. Like it's a what's the saying they say? It's like it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, which is the same thing that'll happen in med school. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So you just have to be mindful of how you are doing in that marathon on mile 18 to mile 20 to mile 26. It's just like you have to be able to be self-reflective and feel like, oh, am I at a good place to take this test? And if you are, then you take the next step.
But I think when I grow up, I want to be smart as Bobby, just to take it once. And if, take it once, because it's expensive, it's expensive. It's it's time consuming. And also, like, who likes taking exams? Unless you're James, who likes to take it 5 times, which, like, you're mute. You guys are all mute.
Yeah, it's not like it's not like I wanted to take it 5 times. I think it's
Because
like,
you and I need to have a conversation over beer about why
yeah.
did you take it 5?
But I think that's really the one of the huge reasons why we're here. It's like it's the guidance and the mentorship and the advice that you got, in this process. And I would say for me, I didn't get that in like the first 2 or 3 times. And then when I did take it the last time, it was just like, okay, well, like I feel like I am where I need to be to take this test, and whatever I get as I'm gonna get. But I think everything adds to that, like who you're talking to, your mentors, your friends, like your village. It's like it all plays a role into this test. And so that's why I'm saying it's not just the content, it's literally all these like confounding factors that play a role in you coming to test day and be like, oh, I'm ready to take the test and I know that I'm going to do well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, yeah, I was just joking about that part of it, but I think like it is like, yeah, yeah, to me, it's just, I think that even though we're joking with this, but I think that, yeah, just, it's kind of like, running, it's like wanting to go be an Olympian. Like, you don't just wake up and say, I'm going to go run the, 100-meter Olympics against Usain Bolt. Like, it'll take me 20 minutes just to get down that lane. But what are you doing to prepare yourself and putting yourself in those conditions? And like, it's not something you just wake up and say, okay, I'm going to go take the MCAT today. It's like, you got to prepare for it. And I think in terms of um like finding people, that's why like there's summer programs. There are programs that you go and get to know people. If you are at one of the California Medical Scholars Program, there's Avenue M, or all of these different things all over the state. Now, where are, you know, California, quote unquote, heavy, because most of us are in California, but there's programs all over the place. Like the NIH, for example, has a summer program where you go and they pay you to do research. And that's where you find those mentors and those types of things. And I think it's really important. And just talking to people, like one of the biggest things for me, it's like everybody that's pre-med is like very, what is it? They're like, they're in like a witness protection plan. It's like, I get this all the time. Like, yeah, so like, why are you taking organic chemistry? Oh, it's like, just be admitted. Like, yeah, I want to go to medical school and kind of commiserate with each other. But also like knowing how to get the information, because there's some people that are very knowledgeable. I mean, that's why we do these every Fridays and Saturdays. That we have had the deans of admission of Davis and assistant deans and all of these people. It's not like we're not doing it for our own, but it's like you come and ask them questions and ask them advice and find about programs, and then connecting, with people in these programs. But I think, and building a community, I think that's what it is. And I think what I think James said earlier about like finding mentors, it's really, really important. But your mentors are not like, a mentor is not somebody who's a doctor. A mentor could be your organic chemistry professor, who is more likely to like when I took a bio class, and then I found out that my professor at community college was roommate with, you guys will know him, is Dr. Jorge Garcia. They were roommates together, and and he tutored him, and so I was like, oh, if you want to know about this, and so you get to like, and that's what people, if they knowing, like your professors could be mentors, but more likely than not, if they're not physicians, they are more likely to know people that are in those fields. And so I kind of got to know this person through my professor, who put me in touch with them, because they knew who I was and what I was doing and all the things that I was like involved with. And so I think that's what's really important is building that community. And that could be you know community college. Like to me, it's like I've had somebody come up to me and say, "Oh, I can't, I was at community college for 3 years and I can't get a letter of recommendation." I'm like, dude, you spend like 10 hours a week with your professor, in class. Like that's, that's 160 hours that, I spend more time with my professors than I do with my significant other. And like you need to be able to build those relationships with them to kind of because they know everybody. They very everybody's very connected. And I'll put those. Somebody asked, I'll put those in the chat so you'll get to see them. But they've all done presentations on our previous events, but I'll put them in the chat for you. So answer that question. Sorry. And you guys want to ask a couple more questions that's in there?
Yeah, I could do that. Another question that we have, have any of you used the Pay Medical School admission application service? Yes or no? Why? If no, who do you ask to read your personal statement?
Okay, James, that's you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I applied 3 times. The third time I was like, this is going to be the last one. And because it's the last one, I wanted to do absolutely everything that I could do to ensure that I can get in. And so I searched the web, I searched Instagram and like basically found someone, Joanne, the honest advisor, and she was really helpful. But I also will keep in mind that I was working full time at a salary job, and so I was able to afford her services. But for me, it was just like it was all or nothing, and so it was like for me, I felt like it was like my last hurrah in applying because it was the third time, and the third time is usually the charm, and it was for me. But it was just like I was gonna do all that I could. Um, whether it was like having someone read my personal statement, my secondaries, interview prep, and that worked really well for me. But I know that there are free services like these basically programs that we're talking about with like Pre-Med CC and Me Mentor and the Med School Ready application series. Like there's all these different ways that you can get the help that you need. It's just really being courageous and brave to ask for the help. I think that he had mentioned it where um, we don't talk about it a lot, but we all have social capital. Like we all have friends who know friends who know friends, and it really behooves us to kind of like tap into the networks that we're already within, and utilize those networks to basically find ways for it to help you. I think that like in many different industries, people do that really well, and in medicine, we're like far behind depending on the communities that you're a part of. But it's a practice that we should all get really familiar to doing because Christy said it best that you can't do this alone. And I wouldn't advise doing this alone. And I think throughout my whole 10, 11 years of applying, I always had people around me who were pushing me to get to this point. And even like in applying to med school. And so, yeah, so utilize the folks who are around you.
Yeah, I would just say that it's actually something we're working on is the person that's going to be here tomorrow. We're working on getting him to meet with students, and that's something we've been working on to have advising as part of what we're doing, besides bringing all the deans and everybody else to do it. But there's also a plug that I want to make is the Me Mentor MSAR. Um, that's a great program. It's free, and that's something that's really good. Now, James was fortunate to be able to work and pay because, but also like those. My only thing is that if you pay anyone, that's just my personal opinion. Those advising is that some of them are very good, some of them are former. But I think is once you pay somebody to do something, you may not get unbiased because then that's just me. That's my personal opinion. It's that there's a lot of there's a lot of good free resources out there that are available to you. And paying someone, it's maybe, and the problem is now this becoming this thing is that you have to pay someone to give you advice. And there's a lot of services out there that are available to you, and don't feel that you have to go pay. Now, if you have the money to do it, by all means, like if you could make it rain like James, go for it. Um, but yeah, definitely do it. And so we're at 6:30, and this is a question I'll always like to ask at the end of it is if you have to give an advice to yourself back where you were a pre-med student, what would it be that advice, and what would you do differently, and what would you do the same? So if you could go back in the time machine.
Yeah, I think a piece of advice I would give myself is to try to enjoy the process as much as you can. I feel like, a lot of times we can get overwhelmed with the daunting task of trying to take these exams like the MCAT application cycle, and then the waiting game is no fun. But life still happens throughout this process, and we realize in medical school, life continues to go on as well. And, you don't want to get to the end of the road and realize, like, maybe I made it here, but didn't enjoy the process along the way. So I think celebrating the small victories along the way is one way that you can do that. And I think that that's something I would have tried to focus on even more. I think it gets hard when you're trying to look at bigger picture of like, oh, I'm not in medical school yet. Like, am I ever going to make it? But if you kind of break it down bit by bit, and it's like, oh, I finally got that letter of rec squared away. I finally, got the score I wanted on the MCAT. I finished this section of my application. Things are progressing, and kind of celebrating those small victories, because it's really important in medical school to kind of do that same thing, is celebrate your small wins. I think that's something I would have tried to implement and incorporate to make the process more enjoyable, because it shouldn't really be, sometimes it can be hectic and sometimes feel, super chaotic, but at the end of the day, this is a lifestyle that you're going to commit to. So being able to enjoy it along the way as much as you can and enjoy life is something that a piece of advice I would give to myself.
Okay, for me, I think some of you may or may not know I'm kind of involved everywhere and anywhere. I have I have a hard time like saying no. It kind of goes with what Frank says. It's just like you get kind of like on this wheel of like that just keeps on turning and keep adding more things. And it's just like because you're used to it. It's like getting into medical school is hard. So it seems like you have to take a piece of every pie that's offered to you. And I think like one thing like I would say to myself, and I'm trying to say that to myself now, really, is to like be really choosy. I think be protective over your peace, but also have a like balance. Like my thing is that, and I say this to all my friends, they've heard me say this, is like life is too short. Nothing is guaranteed. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. So in my head, that means let's do everything. But like there's a balance to thinking that like you will make it to 85. So you will do a whole bunch of things in moderation. Don't work yourself to like to not enjoy the things that you're doing, like what Frank said. And then just like surrounding yourself with like the like people that are like fueling you. And I think a lot of it, sometimes you get sucked into spaces that are like a little tense, like they're in that pre-med mindset. And like switch around, if you have that, maybe spend only Monday to Wednesday with them and then hang out with your soccer club, like have balance in like the people you surround yourself with, have balance in like let's be involved but not too involved. Let's work on this aspect of ourselves and not too much of the extracurriculars, maybe work on your academics. So it's like I would have just told myself to chill. I'm telling myself to chill now, really.
I'm still thinking about mine's Bobby, but so I think I'll start off with what I wouldn't have changed. I wouldn't have changed the fact that I lived life in the midst. Like I think that similar to the sentiments that Frank was saying, like it took a long time to get to this point, and I would say that I don't know if I enjoyed the process of it or the journey, but I had fun. And I did, and I did things that I wouldn't trade for the world. Like I finished college, I got married, I moved around from different places, I traveled, and it's like I wouldn't trade that for anything. The thing that I would change, which is I think was what I was like really thinking about, which is hard because it's like, well, all of those things led to this point. And so it's really hard to think about like, oh, what's the one thing I would change? Um, and it's unlike me to not answer a question, but I don't know. I don't know what I would change because like it's like there was like this quote that we got when we were graduating where it's like the present is like something is the manageable. What was it? What did it say? That sign that we had when we were graduating or when we got our white coat, it's like oh, this present moment was the unmanageable future. And it's like, yes, this present moment was the unimaginable future. And all those things played a role in me getting to this point. And so it's like, I can't, like, it's hard for me to visualize or even to think about like what's one thing I would take out because those are all parts of this thread. And if I pull one thing out, does that mean that everything else falls? You know, so got too deep, but yeah, that's my answer.
I really admire all of my classmates and I appreciate their honesty because as I've gotten to learn about them, I have been like awestruck with all of the beautiful experiences that they've brought in. And I'm so glad that they're going to be doctors with me one day. I want to say that I'm smart, but smart isn't what got me here. Being resilient, being hardworking got me here, as well as I'm 100% certain my classmates here and my classmates elsewhere also have. I think those qualities really, really matter. So I appreciate the love I'm getting for doing my CV, but that CV sat as an empty document for months. That CV, it's not even a joke. It brought me to tears to be able to talk about myself in that light, to put yourself in this application. The application process is a whole beast on its own. Please get mentors. Please ask for help during that time. It is, especially if you are someone from an underrepresented background, it's just a very emotional and can be a traumatic experience for some of us. So I am resilient. That CV took a while, but when I wrote it down, it was hard. And that pride and confidence that I exude is the practice, and that came later. Also, like being able to actually see all the wonderful things I did definitely helped with giving me some confidence. But like James mentioned earlier, the MCAT being a marathon, taking all these classes, figuring all this out, like all of it is a marathon. I want to make sure that you all know these things are important. You need to have basic knowledge. You need to know things. It is important, but taking the MCAT, taking all these classes is also a test in itself of that resiliency. Med schools want to know that you are going to stick it through all of these difficulties that med school is going to throw at you, from step 1 to rotations to figuring out new study methods like in 3 days, because these blocks go really, really fast. So taking this time as like, it's not just about that grade, it's about everything that you're learning about yourself and practicing during this time. And again, I know I said it earlier, but I really, really value the curiosity that I was able to learn. To me, curiosity is the ability to observe without judgment. What can you observe in yourself without judgment? What can you observe in others without judgment? And seeing where you go from there. Asking questions from that point of view. I think that is really important, and I wouldn't change anything in my thing. Sometimes I think about my personal statement and being embarrassed about some of the vulnerability I shared, but I'm an earnest person. I wear my heart and my emotions on my sleeves. That's who I am. And I do not regret all of the little learning moments I had along the way. So what you're saying, James, I completely agree with you. If the words aren't there, my heart is with you, because I wouldn't change a single thing. And I have so much compassion for the younger person that I was, because I wouldn't be here without them.
Alrighty. Well, we could keep you guys here till 10 o'clock at night, but I gotta go to work. So, and Christy's got 7 other things she needs to do socially. So
Chrissy has a private plane booked tonight to go to the White House.
Sorry.
So
We gotta go. Just kidding.
wow.
I'm kidding. I can keep going, honestly. We should start a podcast now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, I need to start work, so but yes, thank you. And thank you. Great seeing Frank again and Christy and yeah, we do this like twice a week, so show up. We have different diverse speakers. Yeah, and and we now are getting messages from people that attended our events when there were pre-meds that are in med school now. What's that? Oh,
I said that's so cool. I think that's cool.
oh, cool. And again, thank you everyone for your giving us your Friday evening, and have a wonderful night.